All right, it's 9 o'clock. We call the meeting of the Homeless Initiative Advisory Committee to order. I'm David Nash, and we'll start with a roll call. We have, just before we do that, we have two new members, one of whom is here today. Glad to introduce Tricia Killian from the hospital. Yes. And Celeste Ordaway has also been appointed. She was in the audience last month, and she's from Via Health. So, David Nash present. Lance Crawford.
Present.
David Bartholomew. Absent. Jamie Benshoff.
Here.
Sarah Copley.
Present.
Elvia Diaz. Not here. Rick Freeman.
Present.
Claire Hubbard. Absent. Tricia Killian.
Present.
Marcus Laws.
Present.
Dustin Mailman. Tim McEllier.
Present.
Joelle Steininger.
Present.
Jessica Supik has resigned. Jennifer Teague.
Present.
And Celeste Ordaway. So,
Before we go on to the minutes, can I introduce staff?
yes, please do.
So I'm Emily Ball. I'm in the Homeless Strategy Division at the City of Asheville, and you all know Charles Young, who is also in our division, Data and Compliance Specialist. You don't yet know that we now have a third team member. Debbie Alford just joined our team on Monday. You may know her from community work. Before this, she was at Trinity Place, and prior to that was at Homeward Bound, so is coming to us with really great experience in our community, and we're excited to have her.
Great. Thank you. Welcome. So we have the minutes of the November meeting in front of us. Do we have anybody want to make a motion on that?
Make a motion to accept the consent agenda minutes.
I'll second the motion.
Any discussion, corrections? All right, we'll vote on the consent agenda minutes. David Nash, yes. Lance Crawford,
Yes.
Jamie Benshoff,
Yes.
Sarah Copley,
Yes.
Rick Freeman,
Yes.
Tricia Killian,
Yes.
Marcus Laws,
Yes.
Tim McEllier,
Yes.
Joelle Steininger,
Yes.
Jennifer Teague.
Yes.
Did I get everybody? Okay. Committee mechanics, I'm not sure if everybody got it, but apparently our past practice of sending proxies for this meeting is not allowed under the city boards and commission rules. So I would say we know that some people are going to be out of town for an extended period of time, and certainly we would encourage you to send a coworker or representative to the meeting to listen and ask any questions or be part of any discussion. But they will not be able to vote at future meetings. We also had some challenges last year with attendance, and we're asking everybody to come to the meetings all the time, but at least to 75% of the meetings through the year.
I have a question. Would it be posted on City of Asheville website if the meeting was canceled due to weather?
Yes.
Yes, and I would also let you know.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. If the weather's bad, it most likely will be canceled. So. Any questions about the attendance? We do have one member who really hasn't been coming in a while, so we'll have to work on that process going forward. Any other questions about committee administration or anything I forgot to say, Emily? All right, so we have staff from the clerk's office here to talk about public participation and give an update on where we are with the hybrid option, which we would love to have.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Okay, hello, I am Sarah. I'm with the City Clerk's Office. I work very closely with boards and commissions. And Emily asked me to be here today to talk a little bit about public participation and the status of hybrid meetings. So if I could, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the background, where we're at and where we're going, which is the exciting part. And then I'll be happy to try to answer any questions that you might have today. So just as a little bit of background, prior to COVID, per state statute, we were unable to hold virtual meetings at all. All meetings were held in person. With the state of emergency that came with COVID, we were given the option to hold remote meetings for obvious reasons. And the city pivoted very quickly to set up the Google Groups with public input as our platform to hold these meetings remotely. We learned a lot from that, especially that it was more accessible and convenient for members and the community members to follow along. So when the state of emergency ended by the governor, the city created a policy that would enable us to have the option to still hold those remote meetings or in person. So it's one or the other right now. That's where we are at. Now, where we're going, again, this is the exciting part, council and staff has named accessibility to these meetings to be a priority. Last year, the council granted ARPA money, I don't know the dollar amount, I can't remember, to our communications and public engagement department to fund what we're calling the Inclusive and Accessible Government Project. A big piece of that is going to be hybrid meetings. So where we are with that, the Cape Department, Community and Public Engagement, has recently hired a new staff member who will be spearheading that project. So he's already hitting the ground running. His name's Logan Smith. He's in the Cape Department. And touching base with him, he did tell me he's analyzing, thinking about a process, and the equipment to hold hybrid meetings is already being thought of, and we have the funding now, so that's exciting. So I don't have a lot of the details of what that's going to look like, other than to say that it is being worked on. And for a more thorough update, Dawa Hitch, who is the director of Community and Public Engagement, will be given an update to the council committee, our newest council committee, which is Equity and Engagement. So she'll be given a full update of where we're at, where we're going regarding hybrid meetings. And I believe that meeting is February 21st. And that's a council committee, so it will be held virtually, and there is call-in live comment. So that's just kind of a big summary of where we're at right now. I'm happy to try to answer any questions you might have.
Is there a timeline yet besides the February 21st meeting?
Not that I'm aware of. I think that meeting will learn more, and if there is, but I'm not aware of a timeline right now. I can reinforce that it is a priority.
Is there an opportunity for public input or board members' input prior to that time?
Prior to the February meeting, so on that council committee, it will be more or less an update. As with all council committee meetings, you'll see the agenda and be able to make comment live and or before. So that would be an opportunity. But I anticipate there will be more updates and opportunity as we are able to unroll some of the technical aspects.
Okay, thanks.
Rick, do you have a comment to make today, or?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I was just thinking that it would be great if that project took into account the ability to set up these meetings wherever it was convenient for the board. So not necessarily needing to come to this room, but to have equipment on loan or whatever is appropriate so that we could return to where we were holding the virtual meetings before, so that we're not all backed up by one location that
Absolutely.
everybody's trying to fit into.
And I can address that a little bit. So currently the board does have the option to meet where you please. However, we are recommending this room for very particular reasons. We do have the equipment to live stream, And this is the only room that we have this capability. As you can see, the mics are being fed directly to that. We don't have that capability in other conference room at this time. I believe, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I believe upfitting other rooms is a part of that big project as well, to allow to be able to live stream in different places. But right now, this is the only room.
Thank you.
Is part of what you're asking about mobile technology? So
Well,
that we're-
I had to do this for the Coalition of Asheville Neighborhoods when we started to go away from full virtual. And basically, you need some speakers and microphones that will cover a large table so people can be heard. And those are not horrifyingly expensive, depending on the size of the group and how big the tables are. But I didn't have to deal with the live stream part, so I don't know.
Yeah.
We use Zoom and we hand out the Zoom address rather than the way it's done here.
Yeah.
And we put, only the members are able to comment during the Zoom, so you don't run into the problem of people interrupting the flow. That software has the ability to put the other people in a waiting room where you can just watch.
Yeah. I don't-
We have met historically at the Housing Authority office because parking is easier and cheaper, but so if it's possible to, I think that microphones are certainly something we could look into investing in if it's possible to have alternate locations, and that's not the only one to consider.
Definitely. And I could definitely pass along that recommendation.
Just want to share, I have shared this with others at the city, but I personally believe that the COG, the Council of Governments here, has one of the best hybrid systems. So if anybody hasn't checked that out, having been both a participant in the room and also on a virtual platform, truly being able to hear, it allows for the camera to be able to be moved, it can focus in, it can focus out. I have found that to be a really wonderful system setup.
Land of Sky?
Yeah, the end of Sky.
Great. Any other questions? Great. So stay tuned. There will be a lot more to unroll in the coming months. But thank you all.
Thank you so much. Our council liaison, Kim Roney, just came in. I want to acknowledge her presence. Thank you. All right. So the next item on the agenda is the annual report, which is due to City Council, I think, on the 21st. I have prepared a draft and run it by Emily, and am open to any questions, comments, or additions to that document. It's in the packet. Did everybody get a copy or have a chance to read it?
Yes. I thought it was a great report.
In case it's not fresh on anybody's mind, I won't go through the whole thing, but the accomplishments listed are reinvigoration of the HIAC membership with renewed and new membership to focus on thinking as a system, monthly coordination and education meetings with National Alliance to End Homelessness study team, timely and effective allocation of more than $2.1 million in federal continuum of care and emergency solution grant funds, and rollout in collaboration with community partners of an early and well-coordinated Code Purple initiative as a concerted effort to save lives among the unsheltered population during the coldest winter months. And the policy recommendation primarily is to listen carefully and evaluate the NAEH recommendations on January 25th and take concrete steps to implement the highest priorities for permanent solutions for people experiencing homelessness in our community. Is there anything else that we should list as an accomplishment or a recommendation?
I would list with the accomplishments, the allocation from city and county for Code Purple. That was the first time that those funds have been allocated, and it made quite a difference in leveraging funding from private philanthropy.
From both the city and county?
Yes.
Any other comments or additions? Would somebody like to make a motion to approve the annual report for submission to the Councilwoman Romney?
Thank you for allowing me to make a point. I know some of you personally, and I'm getting to know others of you better. I know the important work you do in your organizations in our community. And I noticed the intention to do, 4 permanent solutions for people. And I wondered if it might be the spirit of this group to include with people, because I'm thinking about the people that we work with in our community who need to be at the table, to have seats at the table. And I know the work that y'all do, so I wondered if that might better reflect the work of this group.
Thank you for that
Agreed.
suggestion. I agree. So it'll read permanent solutions with people experiencing homelessness in our community. Motion to approve, anybody?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, we'll vote. David Nash, yes. Lance Crawford?
Yes.
Jamie Benshoff?
Can you clarify what we're voting on, the whole report or
We're
just the
voting-
recommendation?
We're voting on the whole report to submit it, to approve it as final and submit it to council.
Yes.
Where am I? Sarah Copley,
Yes.
Rick Freeman,
Yes.
Tricia Killian,
Yes.
Marcus Laws,
Yes.
Tim McLeay,
Yes.
Joelle Steininger,
Yes.
Jennifer Teague.
Yes.
That's it. All right, thank you very much.
Can I ask one clarifying question? When will that be presented to City Council and County Commission?
I don't know. Kim, do you know? I know that it is submitted to the clerk's office to be provided to all boards and commissions on January 21st.
Yes, and a package of all the advisory boards documents will come to the boards and commissions level and then to the council level for review, so we can see the work and the full list of recommendations that are coming from our advisory boards. That's another way to have a touch point to make sure that we're hearing from our advisory boards and reviewing the scope of the work.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that? Since the report is going to be coming on January 25th, so past the date that we've just drafted this, will there be another opportunity for this board to be able to make recommendations based on the report from NAEH? Or will it have to wait until next January?
So my understanding is this document is a reflection of the previous year's work, so that would be included in the following year's work. When this group makes recommendations, I do, as your liaison to council, send it to the council level. It has come to my attention that I might also send it to the county commission because it informs their work as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have another comment to make on that. We inquired from the Noise Advisory Board whether the only time that we could make a recommendation was in the annual report, and we were told by the clerk's office that no, we could make a recommendation anytime it passes through the legal system and everybody votes for it. Now, that may create upstream headaches because it's coming in not at a time that everything's being prioritized, but that's how we're operating in that board. We have some things we're done with and have strong recommendations, and we have some things that we're in the middle of, and we won't have recommendations until the spring. And so we're writing up the recommendations and advising that other things are in progress and those recommendations will come later. So we could.
That's exactly right. So each month that you have a public meeting, you have an opportunity to make recommendations to the council and commission. Those recommendations would go directly, usually in the form of agenda or staff. For me as your liaison, this is not an established system, but it's a personal practice that when you make recommendations, instead of waiting till the next month's agenda, just to go ahead and send them forward to the council. And now this year going to be adding that to the commission as well. So that could happen when you make the recommendations in January. Those are going to go directly after your meeting.
When is the council retreat?
March 2nd through 3rd.
Okay, so we do have some time after our retreat on January 26th to either make recommendations that day or to think about them a little bit before our February meeting and do it then.
And about the retreat, so right now, addressing homelessness is a top 6 priority of council, and that came out of our last budget retreat. It informs our budget plans and policies and works sort of like a internal legislative agenda. Whether or not it will continue to stay will be part of the budget retreat. So those kinds of recommendations are very helpful as we're making our decisions moving forward. And I'm happy to answer any questions in between and outside of meetings, but there is no public comment during the council budget retreat.
Right, and I wasn't thinking we would go there and make public comment, but to try to get them to you in writing ahead of that time.
Much appreciated.
Thank you. All right, we have voted and approved the annual report with additions mentioned. And I think we're ready for a report on the point-in-time count.
Point in time count. Microphone sensitive. So you all have a memo in your meeting materials about the point in time count, and I'll just briefly review kind of the highlights of that, and then happy to have any discussion or answer any questions. As hopefully you all know, and as I think a lot of folks in our community know, the point in time count is an annual event in our community. This is a federal requirement for every continuum of care to conduct a count once a year. At the end of January, the federal requirement is that the count occurs within the last 10 days in January. In our community, historically, we've done that the last Wednesday of the month. Last year, we moved that to Tuesday so that we could connect with folks at Haywood Street, since that happens every Wednesday and is such a large gathering of people who are unsheltered in particular. So we will do that again this year. So that means the count will be January 31st this year. The purpose of the count has a number of purposes and also a number of limitations. First of all, federal requirement. Secondly, the federal government uses that information to report to Congress on progress being made across the country in the work of ending homelessness that's aggregated with other communities, helps the federal government and policymakers understand trends in population change year after year, and provides that same information for us locally so that we understand in our community, are we making progress, are we not? What are the opportunities we have and the things we need to pay particular attention to based on how our population changes over time? The count works as a single night census where we aim to connect with as many people as possible who are experiencing homelessness on that one night. That has very obvious limitations. So certainly it is not possible that we will identify every single person who is unsheltered in our community, but we will do our level best. We have a strong volunteer effort going, volunteer recruitment effort going, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But in general, the work is to connect with folks who are in shelters and transitional housing. If those programs are already participating in HMIS, our homeless management information system, we're able to pull that data directly, no additional efforts happen there. If those programs are not participating in HMIS, then we ask staff and volunteers to work with folks there to complete paper survey forms. For the unsheltered count, we look to service providers and to our community to volunteer for that effort. Would welcome all of you to participate in this year. I know we have some committee members who are already signed up to do that. Our volunteer effort is to develop teams of volunteers who are assigned a particular geography in our community, and we all leave on the same night. That'll be the night of January 31st. We will gather at Haywood Street for the unsheltered count, get our teams together, send teams out from that location to their specific geography where they will just seek to canvass folks who may be experiencing homelessness in that area, ask them to participate in a survey to collect that data. So the HMIS data, the sheltered and transitional housing data, and the unsheltered data will all come back our team, where we will, I'm saying we, but I mostly mean Charles right now, where we will compile that data and work through our homeless management information system to be sure that we deduplicate. So if we have folks who were surveyed multiple times, we want to be sure to deduplicate that. That will also help us understand kind of big picture demographic information and other household characteristics like veteran status or length of time homeless. So really to try to get a pretty comprehensive picture of who's experiencing homelessness in our community on that single night. Again, certainly has limitations, but for me, it is our most complete data set in the community because we don't yet have full HMIS participation across all of our programs. And so I think we do have a very thorough methodology in the point in time count because we are doing this year after year. It does give us comprehensive data about our homeless population for that single night. I will follow up with an email to you all with the volunteer registration link if you're interested in doing that. If you are operating a shelter program, we will coordinate with you around making sure that we're able to collect that data. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I also want to mention, I think I included this in the memo, the results timeline. So we will, of course, complete the count on the 31st. The day after, at both A Hope and Haywood Street, we'll also be surveying folks to ask where they slept the night before, to be sure that we're able to connect with as many people as possible. And then past that point, we will work to collate all that data, enter all of that into HMIS. I can't overstate what a laborious process that is. And also, we will be waiting for HUD to release some additional guidance for us about HMIS parameters and about how we're able to report that to them. There's a particular submission window that they will open, so we're not able to submit that to them until they open that. We don't have those dates from them yet. And that will also provide a deadline for communities to submit that data. Typically, that is in the spring. Last year, the deadline was May 6th. And so we will certainly work to complete this as quickly as we can so we can get the data out to the community. But I would anticipate probably an April timeline to be able to share results with you all.
Thank you.
I bring lived experience. And I was in A-Hope during the point in time where they asked me where I had spent the night before, and I was suspicious because I know camping is not allowed in Asheville, so I wasn't truthful, I was evasive.
Yeah, that's great input. I think that's great for, I don't know if you want to speak to that, but I think part of what we want to do in training with volunteers and folks who are conducting the count is provide that exact kind of input so that people are able to really communicate with folks about what the count is and what the purpose is. But that's great insight.
Yeah, and I would only add to that. I think just through the process with the training that's going on, letting anybody who is going to participate know what type of verbiage to use to ease that type of process and to allow people to feel more open and talking about what their experience is. And then I would also want to ask, could those questions be made available to this board so that we have a sense of what's being asked of folks who are on the street? So for those of us who are working directly with organizations, that we know how to talk to our folks ahead of time.
Absolutely. I'll also say that for the most part, the questions in the survey are prescriptive. We're not able to make changes to those at the local level, and they're mostly demographic information, household characteristics, length of time homeless. We did last year add some questions for the unsheltered count in particular to try to get a better understanding of who's unsheltered and why. And so we'll replicate that this year. Last year, because that was our first year, that gives us some baseline data so then we can understand how or whether that may have changed in the past year. But yes, I'll be glad to send those questions to you.
Thank you.
For that question, is it possible just to ask, or for people to answer that they were camping and not say a specific location?
Absolutely.
I have a question. I don't even know if it's an appropriate question or not, so please forgive me. Since it's so difficult to survey the unsheltered population, is there any public outreach to say, hey, I see a camp here, or, you know, there's a tent there, or anything like that to help the geographic folks? Is that even an appropriate public request? I mean, because people are everywhere, right? So would that help, or would that just confuse things even if it was anonymous, that help find the location for the unsheltered?
I'll say that makes sense to me. I don't, I wonder if you have input on that.
I would say beforehand, if the public has that information, it would be helpful. That would help to map where we need to be in the city, to actually get an accurate count. But as far as, we would still need to interview those folks in order not to duplicate efforts.
Right. So if I could get language that was appropriate, I could use the Coalition of Asheville Neighborhoods email list to just give people a heads up that the point in time count is coming, use the content that's here to tell them how important that is to making the right decisions and finding people. And if there's just an email or phone number, whatever you guys think is best, we could get it out that way. And maybe CAPE would also do some public notification, because what I've seen from trying to communicate what's going on, the average person in the public doesn't even understand that there is a thing called a point in time count, and they don't know what it means, and they don't consume it. So rumors that are unsubstantiated about the population and all that stuff just continues to run around in the outside. So anything we can do to educate would be great.
So, go ahead.
Oh, I have a request, having participated in the point in time count at night downtown. Can we have access to any of those like reflective vests? Because I always feel like it would be nice to be able to be identified as, I don't know, a safe person to talk to and not get run over by a car.
I would love for you to not get run over by a car. Yeah, I'll look into that. Thanks.
So, I'm not sure about CAPE sending that out as sort of a broadcast to every citizen of Asheville, but I think in our networks, if we hear of a particular location, it seems like it would be appropriate to send it to Marcus and make sure that he's aware that that's a place that can be checked for unsheltered folks.
I think actually if you can ask folks to send that to me, because we'll map out the specific areas for volunteer teams to canvass, and we'll coordinate, Marcus's folks are involved in that also.
Okay, to Emily. You have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, well, more of a statement. So I think in the past, in doing this in the past, we've had better counts when it's code purple because it, forces more people to come into shelter, the weather and that sort of thing. I can't see the forecast at this point that far in advance, but if on the 31st, if it doesn't fall, the weather in the parameters of what we would normally do for Code Purple, I'd like to suggest that we go ahead and call Code Purple anyway and have more people come into shelter, and that way it makes the count a lot better because they're coming to us versus us, having to go out and find them.
That's exactly what I was going to ask. So.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to everybody else? Thanks, Tim.
Yep.
All right, any other questions or comments about the point in time count?
One thing I will say about that, it does potentially help connect with folks who we might otherwise miss, which is certainly the goal. I think if it does play out that way, I think we'd want to be mindful that if it had not been Code Purple, probably those are folks who would be unsheltered, so could skew our unsheltered count. Does that make sense? So a thing for us to consider as we understand the data.
I see that, manipulating the conditions to get a count result.
To ensure we have an accurate count
Right.
of the human beings who don't have housing in our community, which is what you're saying, that's the purpose.
It seems like all of the Code Purple guests should be identified as unsheltered. even if
I would agree with that, because, I mean, that's only, that's only temporary. I mean, for the night or whatever, if the weather changes, they're still, unsheltered, so.
they're predominantly unsheltered. They're able to come inside when it's freezing, when it's below freezing.
Right.
I really appreciated the fact that the Code Purple was extended during that cold period over Christmas, so they didn't have to leave.
Yeah, thanks to ABCCM for all the work that you've been doing around Code Purple. And the Code Purple Committee, of course, but
Yes.
you. All right, can we move on? Code Purple. We had a second round of funding. There is a document in your packets. We had just under $10,000 remaining to award in the second round, and you authorized the Finance Committee to make the decision, or the Finance Work Group, excuse me. We made the decision to distribute all of that to ABCCM because of the way they've stepped up this year to provide the service. Any questions about that?
Had Jubilee requested additional funding? And it was just not. So I'm sorry, the 9,000 that's listed there, is that the remaining amount that was requested from the initial request?
Yes, that's the amount that was not awarded because Salvation Army had originally made a request and then decided that they couldn't proceed. So we had two requests, one from ABCCM and one from Jubilee. I don't think we were particularly opposed to the initiative at Jubilee, but it didn't seem like it was ready to go this year in terms of having other funding and stuff that would be needed, and so we awarded it to ABCCM.
And so where does the ecumenical shelter project fit into this?
They were awarded funding in the first round and didn't submit a request in the second round.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
And they do have, other funding, we determined the last meeting to provide several months of service.
So will Jubilee function at all without this funding, or will they function just at a smaller amount, or do we know?
They are functioning. They're open.
Separately from the ecumenical shelter? I'm sorry, I'm a little
Yes, that's
confused.
a
but- okay,
separate
'cause
initiative.
I didn't realize the Jubilee was also online. Okay. Thanks.
All right, any other questions?
I'm sorry, I do have another question. Jubilee, is it a winter shelter or Code Purple shelter?
Winter shelter.
And when did it open, and how long did it they running?
I do, yeah, no, it's fine. The shelter at Jubilee was started by two women who were really involved in the shelter at Trinity last winter. And when that Trinity shelter closed in March, they had a handful of women who they wanted to continue to provide shelter for. So they've been operating that shelter at Jubilee since April of last year and had intended to sort of wind down by the fall with the people, as people were moving out of the shelter, but then elected to stay open for the winter just to be responsive to the community need.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll just say for you all and for the community that all three winter shelters, so also Costello House, are nightly as opposed to dependent on the weather like Code Purple, and also are referral only. So for all three of these locations, those are not shelters that folks can, get into day of just by walking in. So all three are referral only.
Okay, so I think I misstated my understanding of the Jubilee shelter a minute ago, so I'll let Emily's comment correct that. Okay, we're ready for Josh. Hey, Josh, can you hear us?
Hey. Can you guys hear and see me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, well, Happy New Year all. As you know, I cannot see the room, so I'm assuming everyone's waving. I'm gonna go ahead and
We're all
share.
waving back at you now.
Oh, I can visualize it. Let me see. So I'm just going to do a pretty brief, kind of really overview, stuff we've already kind of talked about, just to reinforce some of the topics, but also really just get to the update of.
Hey, Josh, can I interrupt you? This is Emily.
Yes.
We can hear you, but it's real quiet, and we have the volume turned up as loud as it will go. So if you can get as close to your mic as you can and speak up, that'd be helpful.
Yes, let me see if I can turn the mic up too.
I think it's not you, it's us, but if you can assist, that'd be great.
This way we go. All right, is that any better? I'm trying to project.
Yeah, try to project. It's not a lot better, but we can hear you. Just be aware and talk as loud as you can.
Well, stop me at any time to ask any clarifying questions. I'm also a little bit under the weather, so I'm trying to talk as loud as I can. All right, you guys ready?
Hold on just a second. Got a side conversation going on here.
I was just asking if it'd be possible to put on closed captioning, either on his side or ours, at least to be read. Oh, perfect.
So, we're not wrestling on this side anyway. Now we can hear you.
Give me the audio thumbs up, and you want me to go ahead.
I think we got you.
All right.
Perfect. Thanks, Charles.
All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and just get started. Just a brief introduction. You've seen the slide multiple times. I'm not going to dive deep into it, just showing what the alliance is and the capacity building team that myself, what we did. Just quickly, we'll just talk. I always want to tie everything to what makes an effective and efficient and equitable homeless system. That is the nature of the report that we created. That's going to be, the nature of the recommendations to ensure folks get housed quickly as possible within Asheville, Buckley County COC, and diverted when safe and appropriate to alternative housing locations. So that's kind of the focus of this, like the basic premise of kind of where we work towards to try to create an effective, efficient, and equitable system. Parts of the effective, elements of an effective system is a deep belief in housing first, right? And having homeless prevention and diversion targeted and appropriate to folks who are highest need of potentially entering the homeless system, street outreach being coordinated and housing focused, emergency crisis services being available, quick returns to housing with RH, PSH, transitional housing, and maintaining housing, and other mainstream housing options. So all of this is done with the racial equity lens through a coordinated entry system that includes access, assessment, referral, prioritization and referral. So those four key components of a coordinated entry need to be in place in order for these things to work systemically what they should. Also, having data and being able to use data to make data-driven decisions to see what's working, what's not, what is the need. But again, we have to have that full picture of data to know what exactly we need. And then this is just a snapshot of what like a crisis response system, a homeless response system will look like. At the front door, you have targeted prevention and diversion. Again, targeted meaning that there is some type of assessment or some type of way to discern who is most at risk of experiencing homelessness. It's not just about eligibility as far as like AMI. It's about what are some of your past history of homelessness, because we know that if we provide prevention to every single person who's eligible, that's closer to eviction prevention and not homeless prevention. Homeless prevention specifically is meant to be targeted, and diversion should be at the front door, even though the housing focused problem solving, the key part of reversion, should be permeable throughout the entire homeless response system. So again, all of these interventions are working towards getting folks housed. And housed can look a lot of different outcomes, right? It could be back to family and friends. It could be in shared housing. It could be in recovery housing. It could be in a multitude of places. So I also wanted to highlight it again. I think we did this one in July, I believe. What is the duties of the COC? And just to go over it, just again, and I'll tell you why when I do the update. So these are the core principles that are that HUD mandates for COCs to do, right? So we have to adopt the written processes to select the board, adopt a governance charter, hold meetings at least semi-annually, invite members publicly, appoint committees, subcommittees, and work groups, lead all efforts through a racial equity lens, evaluate COC and ESG projects, establish written standards for providing assistance, establish system performance goals and incentives, incentivize performance, reallocate to high-performing providers, prepare for federal funding applications, establish priorities, and establish, operate, and continually improve coordinated entry using data, coordinated entry system resource to address the needs of the system, right? Needs of folks experiencing homelessness. A part of this should be included ensuring that there's adequate representation in the COC and the COC board of folks with lived experience, staying away from tokenism, which is, having one individual and the person who is on the doesn't have a lot of the same power as some of the other board members. So I'm bringing this up, and I'll tell you why in a second. So let's just focus on, one of the other functions of the COC is choosing a single HMIS and choosing an organization to manage the HMIS. And then COC planning, coordinated housing and service system that meets the needs of those experiencing homelessness, plan to conduct the PRT, conduct annual gaps analysis, provide information required to complete consolidated plan, consult with ESG recipients on plan for allocating ESG funds. So these are I know I'm just kind of reading off the slide, but I just want to make sure I'm highlighting these big picture roles of the COC. So why am I doing that? I'm sorry. In design, operate, follow collaborative process, establish priorities for funding projects in the area. So these are all crucial to ensuring that there's an organized and coordinated effort to utilize any available funding to set the designated system expectations of care, standards of care in the community, all fall under that COC. And one of the things that we are going to recommend is, that this gets fleshed out a little bit more, and actually the board becomes outside of the city, under the city and county. We'll talk more about that at our meeting on the 26th. But we really want the board to be the focal place where these decisions are made, right? Where this process happens, and that's not all through maybe the executive governing board. It could be through the subcommittees that is established. So I just want to say that the report has been finished. We're doing, there's a few edits here and there that we'll have. It will be published on the 20th. We encourage you to please read it as much as you can. The COC board will be vital in these recommendations moving forward, just because we believe it will provide a clear role of all folks involved and where should the decisions being made stem from. We will have an in-person meeting with city and county on January 25th. We encourage you to make that if you can. I'm sure Emily can provide you all with the details if you guys don't have that already. And then the in-person meeting, which is going to be more of like a retreat, where we're going to do a deeper dive in the report and just really kind of flesh out next steps. And we'll be there, as long as myself, to just talk through what some of these things and allow for you all to ask us questions. And so, I think we're trying our best to make it as interactive as possible and really just think through any questions and and thoughts that come up specifically related to the report and you all's role. So we're excited, and really one of the things we're really excited about is these recommendations moving forward, and for some of the folks who are experiencing unsheltered homelessness in Asheville, Buncombe County, COC, or Asheville, Buncombe, COC, that there'll be some systems in place to get their immediate needs and get folks off the street. So we're really excited about that. We're able to work with the city county. We're going to work with you all in person as well. So I think the next time I see you all, I'm not going to be talking to a blank screen. I will be actually looking at you all in the eyes. So I look forward to that. Any questions?
Thank you, Josh. Any questions? Jamie?
I'm fairly new to this. My name is Jamie, and I have lived experience. What is your organization's relationship with ARP and the Baker Tilly request?
Can you all hear me?
Yes, could you hear?
Can you hear us?
Josh, we muted, I had us mute during your presentation, so you didn't hear Jamie's question. So Jamie, can you ask that again?
Hi, I'm Jamie, and I'm fairly new to this. I bring lived experience. What is your relationship with the ARP funds and the upcoming Baker Tilly meeting?
And Josh, for your context, and actually, let me sidebar a minute and then have him answer your question. The funding that Jamie's referencing is the Home ARP funding, which is home funding coming through the American Rescue Plan Act. It's about $4.7 million that's coming to our 4-county home consortium area, which is Madison, Buncombe, Henderson, and Transylvania. Home is an annual HUD funding source for affordable housing and rental assistance. This particular pot of home funding is dedicated to people who are experiencing homelessness or fleeing domestic violence. So we have a unique opportunity, and this is a large infusion of funding for that 4-county region. Baker Tilly has been contracted to help facilitate the planning process to submit our consortium's allocation plan to HUD. So the first step is that as a 4-county region, we identify what the priorities are of the eligible activities and then submit that to HUD for approval. That's well in advance of any actual project applications or funding decisions, just sort of phase 1 priorities for that area. You all, as committee members, should have received an invitation to a focus group to gather some of that input. Those will be happening across those 4 counties to put together that allocation plan. So Josh, that's Jamie's question.
And what you're asking, what my relationship or what my understanding of it is?
What is your relationship? What part will you be playing in that?
So I'm going to be playing any part as far as how that is infused locally. I do hope that based off of some of our recommendations, which do fall under the eligible cost of those home ARP or ARPA dollars will be utilized because these funds are like going to be once in a lifetime type funds that we hope that are used to address systemic issues locally. So, but we will not be involved in that process outside of giving this report. And again, I think that would be a really good opportunity for the COC board to have that organized, targeted understanding of what makes the most sense for those funds and be able to weigh in.
I'll just add to that part of what Baker Tilly is doing in that home art process is kind of similar to the work that the Alliance has been doing, so needs assessment and then helping identify priorities. So we'll be able to share the Alliance content with Baker Tilly so that can help provide some additional information about Buncombe County specifically.
That was my point, duplication of effort.
Any other questions for Josh? Okay, thank you very much, Josh. We look forward to seeing you on the 25th and the 26th.
Wrong.
Okay, we have a retreat for this committee. It will be a public meeting at the Harris Cherokee Center banquet room, correct? And the public is encouraged to attend, but it will be our chance to go through the NAEH report in more detail and to talk about their recommendations and their priority recommendations and what we want to advance forward to the city and county and what we want to take on ourselves as far as those things are concerned. I don't know if some of that may inform the home ARP input as well, as Josh just said. So we hope everybody who's on the committee can be there, and anybody else in the community who's interested is welcome as well. Rick?
Do you consider it primarily a education and exchange of ideas thing, or do you hope for specific action plans or working group formations or what?
That's a good question. I think it'll be primarily information, but it may be helpful if we see some obvious things that we want to advance to at least put a pin in those, by the end of the day.
And if that was the case, would that be a board vote to make those decisions, or would it just, sort of end up in the notes for action at the next HIAC committee? I mean, I'm just trying to prepare myself for how to come prepared.
I'm open to either. Is there any other thoughts on that?
I would anticipate that you would not be voting on that day based on the need to publish those meeting materials in advance and provide public comment opportunity on any action to be taken. But I would anticipate that you would be, again, hearing and understanding the results from the Alliance, and then maybe making a plan to make a plan.
That is what we said, we told the council that we do in our annual report, so.
Is there a facilitator for that meeting outside of the Alliance?
No, so Anne, who is the CEO of the National Alliance to End Homelessness, and Josh will both be here in person for the 25th and 26th, and will be facilitating that retreat.
Any other questions about that?
I'll just add that you should all have calendar invitations for both the 25th and 26th with some detail in those, and I'll send out meeting reminders with logistics information between now and then.
One more. The public will attend, but will they be able to make comment, or will it be sort of like a city council meeting where the public comment comes at the end? I just want to make sure I communicate to my community effectively.
I expect it'll be at the end, if there is any public comment.
Okay.
And if there's not public comment that day, there definitely will be at the next meeting on February 9th.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, which brings us to public comment for today. Do we have any? Hearing none. We've talked about these meetings. The next monthly meeting will be here on February 9th after the retreat. So is there any other business for the committee, or questions, comments, or concerns? And we are adjourned. Thank you very much.